Leviticus. Okay, so Leviticus is a bit of a different animal, shall we say? Yeah, thank you. And what I have here is a few of the opening verses. Those of us who were at Torah study this morning remember, right? Vayikra el Moshe v'yedaber Adonai elav, right? Me'ohel moed le'mor daber el bnei Israel, right? God called to Moses, spoke to Moses from the tent of meeting, saying, "Speak to the Israelite people, say to them, when you present an offering of cattle to Adonai, you shall choose your offering from the herd or flock. If your offering is a burnt offering from the herd, you shall make your offering a male without blemish. You shall bring it to the entrance of the tent of meeting for acceptance in your behalf before God. You shall lay a hand upon the head of the burnt offering, that it may be acceptable in your behalf, in expiation for you. The bull shall be slaughtered before Adonai and Aaron's sons. The priest shall offer the blood, dashing the blood against all sides of the altar, which is at the entrance of the tent of meeting." Friends, have you detected a tone change between Exodus and Leviticus, right? Yes, you have? Not the tone change I was thinking of, but it is actually quite valid, yes. So Leviticus begins, and if you're a commentator, right, you would say Leviticus begins with the priestly code, and then around Leviticus 16 moves into the holiness code, right? And these are they're very different things, right? So Levitical theology, what do I mean by Levitical theology? I see some blank looks, so we're actually pausing before I continue. Okay, Levitical theology, the way that the book of Vayikra talks about, describes, perhaps understands God is very different than previous notions of God we've encountered so far in our Torah, right? And this is also known as how I got in trouble in rabbinical school. This comment, okay? Truth be told, actually, an unfortunate number of incidents begin with this. But Leviticus and Levitical theology is suddenly about sacrifices. Far from the sort of open, easy, free access that the Israelites had to God, right? Oh, Moses is there. Get God on the line. Oh, there's an enemy. We've got a plague. We've got some east wind. We've got an ocean. We have actually a very different understanding of God in Levitical theology. God is accessed through very specific acts of ritual, through very clear sacrifices involving very clear members of society doing the exact right combination to make sure God is there. When I heard this, I said, oh, so suddenly we've gone from the God of Exodus to what I would call a divine vending machine. You hit the exact right code, the exact right sacrifices, and you're good to go. Anyway, my professors did not like that. But there is actually something very compelling to this use of ritual in Leviticus, the idea that God is accessible through clear ritual, through the korbanot. What's korbanot? Sacrifices. What's the root of korban? Right? Kuf, resh, vav? To come near. A sacrifice doesn't just imply like a loss on your part, it brings you closer to God. So our korbanot in this divine vending machine that gets us access regularly to accessible divinity is becomes a key part of how God is understood and offers an idea for how we can understand God, with one exception, which is, when's the last time you or anyone you know did a sacrifice? I was waiting for some joker to be like, oh, yesterday morning. We had a goat, now we don't have a goat. The problem with all of this is that we're not doing sacrifices. And don't take it from me, by the way. I really I listened to a lecture by Jonathan Sachs, who just opens his lecture by saying, this might be the least relatable section of Torah. I didn't say it. But he said this might be the least relatable section of Torah. We no longer have sacrifices, right? The details of, oh, okay, here's this divine vending machine we have, this regular accessible access to God. It's all well and good until you think, oh, that we no longer have the currency to put in that. What do we do? Yes. We make, well, actually, kind of, yeah, that's where we're going. Right? That is sort of what we're aiming towards. And so I want to actually share something my own rabbi said about the importance of this, because I think it provides the bridge between the Leviticus of yesteryear and the Leviticus of today. When we talk about the 5 types of offering in Leviticus, or when we talk about how the priests did it, and we talk about that, there's one voice missing. And he argues, actually, it's the most important. And he said that when you really think about it, the priests, the Kohanim, are almost like psychologists. This, by the way, didn't sit well with me for a good while until he finished the explanation. He said, think of the person who's approaching the priest with the chatat offering, the sin offering, we say. They feel broken. They're at a low point in their life. They've done something wrong. They can't forgive themselves. They can't let something go. And suddenly, there's a priest, there's a voice saying, it's going to be okay. Here's what you need to do. Here's how you can do it. Here's what we'll do. Let me walk you through the process. You have a chance to let this go. What a Christian might say, give unto God. You have a chance to set this all right, and I can do it with you. That is the power of ritual. And while I joke about this vending machine, that's the divine theology getting us step by step. That's why we're so interested in these little minute details in Leviticus, in Vayikra, in our Parsha, even though it seems, oh my God, these people were pedants even 2,800 years ago. No, there's a real power to ritual. The problem is, we're not doing sacrifices. We no longer have the currency for that machine. So what do we do? We make more money. I'm going to tell you that's the answer. That's the metaphorical answer. We have a different form of the exact same thing. That form, the sacrifices, the rabbis say we no longer have a temple, but we still have a chance to participate in the system. And that becomes prayer. The sacrifices and our prayer services line up. If we were in other congregations, they actually have musaf. They correspond specifically to the services, right? But I think we can just zoom out and take the big idea. Your experience of coming into services has an opportunity to be just like that of the broken person with the sin offering, of the person who's struggling, of the person who's bringing a celebratory offer. It doesn't matter. You have a chance to come with your offering of yourself, to show up to tefillah, to prayer, and give it over, just like the Israelites of Leviticus had thousands of years ago, in a carefully ritualized, formalized, we would say the same prayers, we do the exact same thing, in a carefully structured way of connecting to divinity and to God. So, some thoughts about Levitical theology. Oh, yeah, yes.
So just in my study at Vayikra, just in the past few years, we still have artifacts and echoes of what happened back with the altars. Does salt and pepper,
Yes.
is it long ago remembering of always having to bring salt to the altar and the meaning of that? And so even though, we may not sacrifice in the same way, but we never forget what
Not only do we never forget. Yes. Okay. So. What's that? Oh, do you want to repeat what you said? Oh, it was your thought. I don't know if that's possible.
Okay, so all I was saying was that in my study of Vayikra recently, I realized the importance of the artifact of and the echoes of what was done back then that we still do to this day that we might not fully appreciate all the time. And one of those small echoes and artifacts is the fact that we salt our challah on Shabbat. And that's because salt was a required element of bringing sacrifice at the Mishkan and at the temple. And so we still do that to this day. So even though we don't sacrifice in the same way, the rabbis still want us to tie literal things that we're doing now to what was done back then, so that there is always a remembrance and a direct tie to the past. So I think that's a beautiful part of our current rituals to this day.
I'm going to take that one step further, though. I think the rabbis want us to tie our current practices back, right? The sacrifice becomes our services, right? The salt offering is our challah, not just because we're connecting to history, but because we have a chance to step back into, to reconnect, to start using that divine machinery to create our own connection to divinity. So, some food for, oh, no, never mind. Yes. Oh, yes.
This morning in Torah study,
You next.
the subject was much addressed about at Sinai we were overwhelmed and afraid. We couldn't take too much. And it occurs to me while you're talking that ritual mitigates that overwhelmed feeling for us. It gives us a way in, something we can do. It's good that it's repeated all the time because we can't take too much new all at once. Our brain won't absorb it anyway.
Yeah.
Beautiful thought.
I agree. I have nothing to add. No notes. I agree completely. Rabbi Nico had a thought. You can do whatever you wish.
So there are two thoughts that I think it's important to keep in mind. And I'm going to challenge you twice, Rabbi, as we discussed earlier, but
Okay,
I'm going to do it while sitting. Okay, well, change place. So there are two thoughts. First, you say that the rabbis wanted to facilitate the space for us to express ourselves. I want to say yes and no. And the reason for that is that the Amidah, the center prayer in our service, which is during the days of the week, 18 or actually 19 blessings, they are, to some extent, made for the individual to do exactly what the rabbi is saying. So that's the yes. The no is actually 2 of the 3 times that you say Amidah, there is the repetition of the emissary of the public, of the Sheliach Tzibur. And the reason that repetition was established was because the rabbis were extremely preoccupied with the procedure. They were like, so in the morning and in the afternoon services, in Shacharit and in Mincha, there is something called Chaserat Ashatz, the repetition of the representative of the public, of the emissary of the public, in which you read the Tfilat Amidah quietly, and then it is repeated. And that's it. And the reason for that is just in case you didn't say it. It's just in case that the procedure wasn't done correctly. So the 2 things happen at the same time. Now at night, and that's why you need to, in theory, do it in a minyan with a group of people. At night, there is no repetition. Besides on Friday nights, that there is a very short repetition that we have it in our Sidurim. I think it's page 180. You can look later, but it's a shortened version. So that's one thing. which is like the rabbis do want to establish a methodology in which you can do it alone, but they don't really want for the process to happen in an individualistic way. They want to keep the space for that in society and together. And the second part, you were talking about process and the importance of the process, and I was thinking about the importance of authority during this time. That there is a person that says, I got you. If you do these three things, you'll make it through. As opposed to you go to your doctor and the doctor says, well, you had three options. You choose what's best for you. I'm like, I don't know. I'm not a doctor. Just tell me what to do. Tell me what to do and how I feel better. So what do you think about the authority in the context of ritual?
So, okay, there's two parts to this. For your first part, I think there's no daylight between our perspective.
I wanted to put it that way.
No, I first of all, 2 Jews, 3 opinions. And the Amidah as an experience, right, as one, we're just zooming in on this, right, is this deeply formalized, ritualized, the Shmona Esrei, the 18 benedictions, of which, of course, there are 19, right?
Because the story is that actually,
This is true.
if you read the story in the Mishnah of how this comes together, the rabbis are trying to figure out, the temple is gone, sacrifices are gone, and the rabbis are trying to figure out what to do. And then someone says, like, does anybody remember how this rabbi, I think it was Rabbi Eliezer, used to recite the blessings for daily prayers? And there's one who's sitting in the last row, and the Mishnah, by telling us that, is telling us one who wasn't particularly important, that says, yeah, I remember. And he just shared that, and then we have the 18 blessings for prayer. Like, that's how it comes up. Probably they had some conversation, they have some manuscript, but that's how the Mishnah recollects that coming up. And these are 18 blessings. And later on, there's something, Birkat Minim, the blessing, Minim is for the...
Species type?
Yeah, the species of humans, of the other, that appears at the end, that they add it in a time in which they are being in distress, and it's called a time of gzera, of decree, which means that the Jews are being chastened and in difficult circumstances, and there's another blessing, and that's number 19 that comes a bit later.
The Amidah. I think the Amidah is a good example of this sort of 2 Jews, 3 opinions, but I also want to acknowledge that the Amidah is a perfect reflection of the rabbis want to make sure, remember this very specific order of things? It's like a vending machine. I love this metaphor. I got in huge trouble for it, but I think it's actually quite
I
appropriate.
think it's really good, by the way.
Thank you. Right? Because you do the exact right things and you get the exact right thing. The rabbis say, we're going to repeat it to make sure you have access to divinity. On the flip side, there's a famous Jewish scholar, his name is Michael Fishbane, and he shares this idea that actually the Amidah is something totally different. That every day, multiple times a day, a Jew has the experience to stand before God at Sinai, to step outside of time and join revelation. And then you step back into time. That's a little out there. Y'all with me? Nods? Jojo, sort of blank look? No, nod? Okay, good. So I think there's both. There's yes, we have this Levitical theology. It's not the only theology we have, but I think it's particularly relevant and important when we look at Vayikra and we say, oh my God. They're obsessed with the suet, and I had to look up what suet meant years ago. What are they doing? It's so it's like so pedantic and so prescriptive. What's that?
In the minutia.
Yeah, it's in the minutia. So, ilu ve'ilu are the words of your living rabbis. What was your second point, though?
About authority.
about authority.
That someone tells you, I got you. I think it was a very strong point that you made.
I think that
Forgot.
when you do pastoral counseling, you have like a couple like key tools you reach for a lot. They're just very handy. You have them in your toolbox. And one of them is that when you look at a situation and someone is in the middle of it, and you have the context to zoom out, to say, okay, well, I see the bigger picture. One of the best tools you have is to say, okay, well, let me just start at the end. You're going to be okay. And there is something like authority that lets you do that. My brother is a physician, by the way, and so is my grandfather, and he describes the tension. My grandfather could say to a patient, do this, do that, this will happen. Nowadays, you can't, that's not what happens when you go to a physician. And he describes the tension between wanting to tell someone, all right, here's how the best outcomes are, and preserving their own sense of choice and autonomy in the experience. But if you give them all choice and autonomy, we end up in situations where, like, what do we do? This might be a greater comment on liberal Judaism, but we're not going to go there today. Okay, maybe.
But maybe that is part of the theology, and that's my last comment of Leviticus, of Vayikra, a theology in which you deal with things with your own hands, that you get closer to certain things in nature, in which we were discussing in Torah study this morning. People are very comfortable buying a schnitzel in the store, but not necessarily understanding that actually it's coming from a chicken. Like the theology of Leviticus is pretty raw, but maybe that's to some extent a better or an important way to see the world, that we constantly try to filter. And there might be some importance on the ability and the possibility to get closer to where things come from, and to go to some level of simplicity, that you can trust a professional, that you can trust your doctor, that you can trust your rabbi, that you can trust your psychologist. You say, okay, so or your teachers, like okay, what you are telling me is something I believe is reliable, and I think it's way more positive, or it's a very positive way to build the world. We are, the Heschel says that the world, Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel says that the world will not perish for lack of information, but that, by the way, is what we have all the time. The problem with the doctor is that we have too much information, and that we don't know how to filter it. Will not perish for lack of information, but for lack of
Appreciation.
Appreciation. So I think that Leviticus is a call by Vayikra to connect with our ability to appreciate things at a more rudimentary way, and in that way to connect with the divine presence.
No notes. Shabbat shalom.